As the first light of dawn approached, the earth shuddered beneath its surface. The sound emerged first, akin to 100 steeds exhaling flames into the night. Then emerged the war cries, piercing and ascending, cleaving the frigid morning stillness like a razor. Martha stood barefoot on the porch, the lantern's light dancing in the wind, her hands trembling around the rifle she scarcely knew how to wield. The Comanche riders emerged from the fog like phantoms, a formidable force of 50, their faces adorned with streaks of crimson and ash. At the forefront rode a figure, cloaked in wolf pelts, his gaze fixed unwaveringly upon her. He lifted a hand, and the others fell silent. Time came to a standstill, and then she beheld it. On a painted horse, the boy she believed she had rescued rode behind him. Yet, could this be seen as redemption or treachery? Before we delve back into the origins of it all, please introduce yourself and share your location with us. Your stories resonate with me as well, and if this particular tale moves you or captivates your attention, be sure to subscribe. For tomorrow, I have something truly extraordinary in store for you. Dust permeated every corner. Within the crevices of the porch wood, in the gaps that linger, the pages of her tattered Bible, and nestled in the folds of the solitary dress she donned each day. Dark blue with fraying sleeves, it was swept daily by the wind from the west, dry and laden with whispers, as if it had a destination and an abundance of secrets to guard. Martha resided on the outskirts of a town that had little desire for her presence. A fractured shingle roof and a slumped fence, 30 steps beyond, the ancient church bell that had long ceased to toll. She remained solitary, not by her own volition, but because the townspeople ensured she understood her unwelcome status. Whispers surrounded her, claiming she was a harbinger of misfortune, a seer of hidden truths, a conversant with the departed. None of it was true, not truly, yet whispers spread like wildfire across the plains, and hers had taken hold with roots far too deep to uproot now. In a distant past, she had moved with purpose and laughter had flowed freely from her lips, yet that was a time before the flames, before the haunting. Echo of her husband's cry dissolved into smoke, and the left side of her face bore a scar, a relentless reminder of what had been lost. Now she ambled with a subtle limp, wavering on frigid mornings, and her voice had softened, as if the world had gently placed a finger to her lips, urging her to remain silent. In this way, the town adhered to that silence as well. On Sundays, she found herself seated in solitude on the back pew, as the others congregated in the front. She found herself excluded from the potlucks, her name never gracing the prayer rolls. The preacher acknowledged her with a nod when their gazes intertwined, yet her name remained unspoken from the pulpit. For them, it was simpler that way. For Martha, it was merely a repetition of what she already knew. The children murmured as she walked by, while their mothers drew them in tightly, as if the scar on her face could somehow leap through the air and attach itself to their own skin. She never raised her voice at them. She recalled a time of youth, a time untouched by flames, unscarred by conflict, before the gentle soul with the lopsided grin set forth one dawn and never returned. He had been her entire world. In that moment she found herself with nothing but the house and the profound stillness that enveloped her. 3 years had passed since her husband's death. Months had passed since the war's conclusion. Yet death lingered, seemingly unaware of the news. He had ventured out to tend to a neighbor's injured cattle, but all that remained was his hat, stained with blood along the brim, an arrow piercing through the letter D, resting upon the crown. No resolution, merely an unsatisfactory conclusion, and inquiries that reverberated more intensely than gunfire within her thoughts. Martha ceased her anticipation for responses. Her words dwindled to a mere whisper. The land craved silence. It required both skillful hands and a generous measure of patience. In one corner of the yard, she nurtured the potatoes, while in another, she tended to the chickens with care. Days drifted by like a whisper through parched fields, unremarkable and frayed at the seams. One evening, she beheld the sun as it bled out across the horizon, a whiskey-hued sky unfurling delicately over the hills. It was the inaugural moment she caught the sound, the jagged, irregular inhalation of a presence close at hand. Before we plunge further into the narrative, a brief note is in order. I am Thomas, the storyteller guiding you through this narration. If this resonates with you, please share your thoughts in the comments and we can maintain this tone in upcoming videos. Let us return to Martha. She discovered him just beyond the chicken coop, a boy, perhaps no older than 10 or 11, bare-chested and trembling beneath a thorn bush. His left leg lay ensconced in a tattered strip of cloth, thoroughly saturated with blood and grime. He gazed at her, his eyes fierce and vigilant, reminiscent of a cornered beast. Comanche. It was unmistakable. The angular line of his jaw, the necklace of bones draping around his neck, the intricate ink markings tracing the contours of his shoulder. He ought to have fled at the sight of her, yet he found himself rooted to the spot. The leg had succumbed beyond any hope of recovery. Martha remained silent. She knelt down, deliberately, her hands resting open before her. His gaze darted from her hands to her face, lingering on the scar that marked her skin. He recoiled. While the majority sought to escape, he remained still, refusing to make an attempt to crawl away. Perhaps he recognized a reflection of his own shattered pieces in her vulnerability. In silence, she raised him up. He was delicate, feverish, and weak, and her legs almost buckled as she brought him inside. She gently placed him on the weathered cot that had once cradled her husband's slumber, retrieved a damp cloth from the wash basin, and began the careful task of tending to the wound. He let out a sharp hiss. She silenced him softly. No identities were revealed. He was unfamiliar with her tongue, and she was equally lost in his. Yet pain spoke its own dialect, and that evening, they both grasped its meaning. Finished. For the following 2 days, Martha tended to the boy in silence. She simmered herbs, ground roots, and fought to keep her mind from wandering to the consequences of a townsperson glimpsing the unfamiliar shadow in her window. In the stillness of the night, she settled into the rocking chair, her gaze fixed on the boy as he breathed softly. On the second evening, the fever finally subsided. He opened his eyes and gazed at the ceiling, as if it were a familiar sight from a dream long past. As dawn broke, he partook in his morning meal. As the afternoon sun cast its warm glow, a smile graced his lips. It was the inaugural smile she had encountered in what felt like months, perhaps even years. It shattered a part of her, a fragment long hidden beneath layers too profound for expression. She refrained from inquiring about his solitude, nor did she question the distance he had traveled. She felt an undeniable certainty that he belonged to someone, and that someone would inevitably come searching for him. With the dawn of the fourth morning, a shift in the wind was palpable. This time, it arrived from the east, chillier, emitting a distinct aroma, perhaps rain, or perhaps gunpowder. Martha lingered on the porch, a tin cup cradled in her hand, while the boy rested peacefully behind her, blankets snugly wrapped around his chin. Her gaze traversed the serpentine dirt road that meandered down from the hills. It was at that moment she caught sight of him, not one who rides, a solitary figure traversing the path, a solitary silhouette clad in a weathered brown duster. With the brim of the hat drawn low, each footfall echoes softly in the stillness, leisurely, as if time held no sway over him. Perhaps he had traversed every corner of the world, bearing the scars as testament to his journeys. She tensed, clutched the tin with increasing intensity. Every stranger who crossed our path did so with purpose, not at this distance. Upon his arrival he paused at the fence. One hand lounged nonchalantly on the gate latch, while the other hovered close to the revolver at his hip. His visage was cloaked in shadow, yet as he inclined his head, the light danced upon his jawline. Weathered and rugged, a faint scar mends just below his cheekbone. He remained silent. She did not either. Not at this moment. Only the wind whispered between them, accompanied by the off-key crowing of a distant rooster. He raised his hat with a deliberate, measured motion. "Madam," his voice resonated softly. "It's quite simple, firm, merely sufficient to bear." He glanced beyond her momentarily, his gaze wandering to the window where the curtain had fluttered slightly. Perhaps he perceived the outline of the boy. Perhaps he beheld nothing whatsoever. "I'm not here to take anything," he stated. "And I certainly am not here to peddle a Bible." It nearly brought a smile to her lips. "Nearly. What brings you here?" she inquired. Her voice, though hoarse from neglect, remained unwavering. He gave a nonchalant shrug. "I overheard someone mention this. Way tended to a wounded dog. I thought that could be a metaphor worth exploring." She squinted her eyes. "Are you a bounty hunter? Were I in that position, would I openly admit it?" Once more silence enveloped the scene. It extended yet remained comfortable, as if two individuals were challenging each other to see how long they could hold their breath, occupying the same space, yet without the necessity to fill it. Martha observed him intently. He appeared unafraid. Moreover, he regarded her scar with a gaze that was unlike that of others. He gazed at her as if she were a presence that lingered on, a remnant of a world that still held her place. "I'm not seeking conflict," she stated. "Good," he replied. "One need not seek out trouble. It has a way of discovering people all on its own." He pivoted as if poised to depart. Then there was a pause. "Do you have any water available?" She inclined her head, gesturing with her chin toward the well situated behind the house. He left the familiar path behind and entered her realm with unwavering confidence. Silence enveloped them that day, words unspoken. He took a sip, adjusted his hat once more, and meandered away behind the barn, where he secured his modest bedroll beneath the shade of a tree. No elaboration, no appeal. He lingered, as though the earth had embraced him, allowing him to descend into its depths. The boy glanced at him through the curtains, uttered not a word, merely observed. Martha observed how the man, though close at hand, maintained a deliberate distance, neither intimidating nor overly casual. In the waning hours of the afternoon, she discovered a neatly arranged bundle of fresh kindling awaiting her on the porch. A modest act, yet it resonated profoundly. And so it was. As the night deepened and the wind began to howl once more, she chose to leave the door unlocked. What if someone truly perceived you for your essence rather than the burdens you bear? Join us. Perhaps one day, that tale will belong to you as well. He was known as Ellis, a name that echoed with mystery. Thus he claimed. He refrained from providing a last name, and Martha chose not to inquire. She believed that everyone carried a rationale for leaving fragments of themselves in the past. He appeared not to be a man of deceit, but rather one who stored his truth in a distant jar, far beyond anyone's grasp. On the second morning, he found himself assisting with the fence. She remarked that it tilted too far to the east, suggesting she should steady it before the wind swept it completely away. His hands bore the marks of time, etched with scars and hardened by toil. Yet he toiled as if he welcomed challenges with open arms. He remained silent about the boy, offered no inquiries regarding the scar. Yet, in the twilight's embrace, he gazed at her for an extended moment and spoke. "The world is not gentle with those it fails to comprehend. It appears you possess that knowledge." She locked eyes with him. "I have acquired knowledge. In small towns, news spreads with a swiftness that rivals the flash of lightning in a parched sky." On the third day, Mrs. Avery from the church found herself at the general store, eagerly sharing with anyone who would lend an ear that a man had been spotted walking the ridge close to Martha's place. "He claimed to have Comanche on his boots," she murmured with a volume that carried across the entire aisle. She has always possessed an air of peculiarity, ever since the day her husband vanished without a trace. It was noted by another that the sheriff had been absent for more than a week. Another claimed to have heard the distant echo of drums the night prior. As the sun dipped below the horizon, 3 men set out to visit the widow. Martha caught sight of them just as they approached the gate. As she shelled peas on the porch, Ellis lingered silently in the barn's shadows. He observed their approach, slender, furious figures, stirring up dust as if they possessed the very earth beneath their feet. Even in Miss Martha, one was summoned. His smile stretched across his face, far too broad to convey anything resembling friendliness. "I stopped by to ensure your safety. Many peculiar occurrences are unfolding. Recently, she has remained in bed. I am well. It has come to our attention that you may be expecting a visitor. We thought it might be nice to provide some companionship." Behind her, the door let out a soft creak. She was acutely aware that the boy was listening. Ellis emerged then, nonchalantly cleaning his hands with a rag. He appeared as though he had just completed the task of mending a wheel. He certainly wasn't prepared, in preparation for a confrontation. Yet, there was an unspoken truth reflected in his gaze. "I don't mean to interrupt," he remarked. "However, the ladies have already found companionship, and I suppose that's all she requires for this evening." The 3 men were displeased by that. Their horses fidgeted, fingers inching toward their hips, yet none of them were foolish. The leaders exchanged harsh words, their disdain evident as they spat upon the ground. "Your choice of companions is quite remarkable, Martha," she gazed in return. "Indeed you do." They departed shrouded in a haze of bitterness, and she was certain they would return, with an increase in men and a decrease in inquiries. On that night, the boy finally found his voice. Just a single word. Stillness. From the shadowy recess of the room where he rested. "Dad." Martha stood still, her body rigid with shock, rotated gradually. He gestured toward the distant horizon, where the breeze whispers. The air had transformed once more, resonating with the faint echo of distant drums. Minimal, unwavering, approaching steadily. They arrived as the sun dipped below the horizon. Not champions, not Comanche. Inhabitants of the town, 3 women, 2 individuals, a solitary preacher, all resting on borrowed righteousness. Torches were conspicuously absent from their belongings, yet there was no necessity for them to do so. Their voices seared with an equal intensity. "You cannot protect them, Martha." Mrs. Avery stood at the front, her arms crossed, a hat pinned too tightly against her curls. "Of all individuals, you. Following the events concerning your husband." Martha lingered in the doorway, her hands tightly clenched at her sides. The young lad once more concealed himself behind the curtain. Ellis had vanished from view. She longed for his presence. "I didn't invite you here," she said, with an icy demeanor. Preacher Geller asserted, "We're not seeking permission." His Bible dangled from one hand, exuding an air of menace. "This land is not yours if you are merely using it as a refuge for wrongdoing." Martha emerged, gently closing the door in her wake. "Sin," she echoed. "He is but a child, isolated. He belongs to the Comanche tribe." The words struck with the weight of stones. "And you've become involved with a wanderer who carries a firearm. And without a name." Mrs. Avery's voice quivered with malice. "Do you really believe that no one has observed the events that unfold once the sun sets? Do you believe you can conceal yourself behind your scars for all eternity?" Martha recoiled. "Hardly. Yet that was precisely what they required." The preacher advanced, his voice rising with fervor. "For years, Martha, you have dwelled in the shadows. Yet this is an act of defiance. Divine observation is ever present. We all do." She remained silent, merely gazed at them, allowing the heaviness to rest like soot, allowing the shame to swell in her throat, bitter and acrid. Then one of the men, Tom Kinley, cast an object at her feet, a rag doll, adorned with red thread and possessing haunting black eyes. She was aware of it. It had once been her daughter's, the one whose name lingered in silence between them. The one interred in the distant field. Her knees gave way. "You abandoned her," he remarked. "You allowed her to perish as you pursued phantoms in the forest." Martha sank onto the porch, her chest rising and falling with each labored breath, her hands extended, not toward the doll, but to steady herself. She struggled against the suffocating tide of recollection, yet no one reached out, no one offered a hand. They turned and departed, abandoning the doll to the lingering echoes of judgment in the frigid earth. The boy creaked the door open, his eyes wide and his breath held in silence. She averted her gaze, concealing the tears that threatened to spill. On that night, she gathered no belongings. "I just stepped through the back gate and ventured into the woods, ascending the hills. Without a destination, simply moving forward." The heavens deepened in hue, shadows of clouds engulfing the moon's glow. The chill seeped into her boots, rendering her feet numb. Yet she pressed on. Not when the branches lacerated her arms, nor when the wolves howled from distant ridges. She continued her journey, each labored breath a poignant reminder of her existence. And then she fell. The snow arrived unexpectedly, a merciless tempest in April. Frosty crystals adorned her shoulders, her hair, her hands. She reclined, nestled beneath the embrace of a cedar tree, shivering softly. She refrained from prayer. She held no hope. She lingered in anticipation, for the cold to seize her as it had, claimed everything else. Initially, his voice went unnoticed by her. She was unaware of the subtle change in the atmosphere, only sensing the comforting weight of a coat draped across her shoulders. Then came his voice, gentle, near. "I have been searching for you, Ellis." She gradually opened her eyes. He knelt beside her, the rain weaving through his hair while the snow dripped and melted upon his sleeves. "How did you manage that?" "You didn't say goodbye," he remarked. "It didn't quite resonate with your essence." Her laughter echoed through the air. "Harsh. You're unfamiliar with who I am." He inclined his head. "Perhaps. Yet I can recognize running when it unfolds before me." He refrained from lifting her. There were no elaborate speeches or lofty promises made. He merely sat there. He removed his gloves. He clasped her hands within his own, allow her to tremble, allow her the space to breathe. "I'm not strong," she whispered. Her voice trembled, more delicate than a whispering breeze. I desired to become. Yet they shattered me, and I allowed it to happen. Ellis chose not to engage in a dispute, did not hasten to express dissent. He gazed at her hands, filled with trepidation, raw and tender, worn and faded, reminiscent of ancient cartography. "Individuals such as ourselves," he remarked softly, "we are not afforded the luxury of breaking in public. Thus we shatter in silence and subsequently rise fragmented." She fluttered her eyelashes, gazed upon him. "There are no pieces remaining." He leaned in just a fraction, his breath forming delicate wisps in the chilled air. "Allow me the pleasure of your company as you collect more." He guided her down the path, not cradling her in his arms, but walking closely beside her, allowing her to rest against his shoulder. With every step, it was as if a layer of pain was being cast off. Upon returning to the cabin, the fire continued to flicker with vitality. The boy maintained the flame, its glow unwavering. He glanced upward as they came back, darting into the shadows, though not too far away. She sank into her chair, enveloped by the warmth of the blankets surrounding her. Ellis lingered at a distance, observing from across the room. Simply present. As the night deepened, the boy approached her quietly, settling into her lap in silence. She cradled him, swaying softly. Outside, Ellis lounged on the porch, a rifle resting across his lap, not due to an anticipation of trouble, but rather because at times the most perilous act a man can undertake is to linger with kindness. The spring thaw arrived with a deliberate pace, as if the land, reminiscent of Martha, hesitated to embrace warmth once more. Snow lingered upon the treetops even in late April. Yet beneath the surface, an unsettling movement began to awaken. A heartbeat, a testament of one's wishes, a serene blaze. She rose with the first light of dawn on most mornings, not out of obligation, but from a genuine desire. The boy lay peacefully asleep on the cot that Ellis had crafted from discarded lumber and sturdy rope. He slumbered peacefully now. Gone are the days of recoiling at every noise. Gone are the restless visions of the night. Martha gently prodded the glowing embers in the hearth, carefully placing fresh wood atop the smoldering remnants. The gentle crackle had become her cherished sound of late. Before long, Ellis would emerge from the woods, axe slung over his shoulder, his beard heavy with the morning frost. He never bothered to knock. He stepped in as if he had always been a part of it, and in some inexplicable way, as the weeks unfolded, he managed to do so. They constructed various creations. Initially, it was the little details. A well-constructed barrier, a fresh hinge for the rear entrance. Above the hearth, shells stand ready. With a sense of purpose, her hands grew steadier. The shout. The limp remained, yet her stride became more resolute. The murmurs in the village lingered like fine particles in the air, yet fewer souls ventured near the gate these days, not since Ellis began placing carved bullets upon the fence posts. A subtle caution. They embarked on their trading journey. Once more, smoked venison for flour, eggs for fabric. In the town, her lips remained uncurled, yet she ceased to lower her gaze. The boy remained concealed during excursions, yet he was acquiring the English language. From the desk of Martha, by Ellis. From absorbing the essence of the world while remaining on its periphery. One afternoon, as the sun sank behind the cottonwoods, Ellis leaned against the porch rail, observing Martha as she brushed the boy's hair with fingers as gentle as a spring breeze. "Have you ever considered leaving?" he inquired. She remained still, not turning. Each day he inclined his head with a deliberate slowness. "Yet you remain." "I will remain," she declared, "for if I depart at this moment they emerge victorious." He remained silent, merely gazed upon her. The elongated scar along her neck glimmered in the firelight, reminiscent of a lingering ache from the past. Once, she confessed, I felt a deep sense of shame about it. My gait, my visage, my stillness. I believed I had misplaced every fragment that defined my womanhood. Ellis leaned in, speaking softly. "It's amusing, really. I never perceived you as shattered. I witnessed your flames consuming everything around you." She gazed at him, her eyes unwavering, weary yet glowing from an inner light. "Perhaps the moment has come for me to cease this endless waiting to attain a sense of completeness." The following morning, they embarked on something grander. The expanse beyond was level and fertile, the grass lush and the soil deep in hue. Ellis unearthed remnants of an old plow hidden beneath the soil near the barn. United, they etched paths into the soil. They reached a consensus on the horse ranch, or perhaps something akin to it. For the first time, the boy's laughter rang out, echoing as he watched Ellis pursue a headstrong colt through the shimmering creek. The laughter, vibrant and fleeting, lingered with Martha throughout the night, yet the flames cast their shadows. By the second week of May, their arrival was imminent. At the break of dawn, Ellis set out on a quest for nails and molasses. Martha lingered to care for the boy's injured ankle. The sound of hooves reached her ears long before the riders came into view. 3 figures stood there, their dusty coats hanging loosely, flat expressions etched upon their faces. Lawmen, or perhaps something akin to that. The leader stood tall, his gray beard framing a face marked by wisdom, while his sharp eyes pierced through with judgment. He slid off with a knowing smirk. The kind of men who donned such attire believed they possessed all the answers. "Martha Walker," he remarked, "I didn't expect to find you playing house with a savage and a ghost." She remained silent, resolute in her stance. "Do you know who I am?" he inquired. She gave a single nod. "Marshal Dent. Ellis shared with me." He let out a soft chuckle. "Did he mention that he abandoned a company? What about a wagon train? Abandoned 2 men to their fate, slipping away into the shadows of the trees like a craven spirit?" Martha remained steadfast, yet the boy behind her clutched at her skirt. Dent inched forward, his curiosity piqued. "He is not the person you believe him to be. He never has been." That evening, Ellis came back to discover her perched on the porch steps, her eyes tinged with red yet exuding a serene composure. "You knew he would arrive," she remarked. He inclined his head in acknowledgement. "I suspected he would. It was merely a question of time." "Is it true?" she inquired. Beside the wagon train, Ellis crouched low, his hands resting thoughtfully on his knees. "Indeed it is, though not in the manner he recounts it." She lingered in anticipation. "I received a command to eliminate a Comanche family residing by the riverbank. No one had been attacked by them, merely existed in proximity that felt all too intimate. 2 of our men ventured forth. When I finally arrived, everything had already been completed." He gulped. The thought was unbearable. "I laid the departed to rest. I placed my badge upon the captain's saddle and turned to leave." Martha gazed at him, her eyes a tempest of emotion and lucidity. "You have been in constant motion since that moment." He inclined his head in acknowledgement. "Up to this point." Then the boy stepped outside, clutching a meticulously carved horse, a creation of Ellis's skilled hands. He set it gently in Ellis's lap, without a word, then ascended into Martha's embrace. She refrained from asking Ellis to depart. Yet he remained still. They made their preparations that evening, not intended for conflict, not for yielding, in pursuit of truth. As dawn broke, she made her way into town on horseback, isolated, with her hair intricately braided, clad in a modest dress, a rifle secured firmly across her back. She strode confidently into the saloon, where Dent was seated, sharing drinks with a pair of deputies. "Are you seeking Ellis?" she uttered. "Come and take him. However, be aware of this. Should you tread upon my territory with arms at the ready, you shall not depart unchanged." Dent let out a hearty laugh. "Are you threatening a marshal, Miss Walker?" "No," she replied. "I assure you, the hill behind my cabins has space for 3 additional crosses, should the need arise." She departed before they had the chance to respond. Silence enveloped the room. She walked alone, with no one trailing behind her. At the ranch, Ellis was engaged in the task of digging fence posts. The young lad guided a rowing colt through the freshly tilled field. Martha settled herself next to the garden bed, where she had sown seeds, an array of them in neat, orderly rows. "I believed I would never create anything again," she remarked. "Yet perhaps that was merely another falsehood they instilled in me." Ellis cast a glance in the direction. "You have transformed into someone entirely different from the woman I once knew." She locked eyes with him. "No," she replied, "I am improved." They arrived with the first light of dawn, 50 riders, quiet, figures cloaked in darkness, riding with an air of mystery. Not a solitary battle cry, every movement purposeful and precise. The rhythmic pounding of hooves against the softened ground echoed, while the horizon ignited with a blaze of orange light. The Comanche did not come seeking vengeance. They had come for the boy, with his father leading the way at the front. Martha stood at the gate, rifle slung across her back, steeling herself for what lay ahead. Ellis stood beside her, his jaw clenched, yet his gaze unwavering. Sutter, the boy, clung to her leg, his bare feet trembling yet refusing to conceal his presence. As the riders came to a halt just past the fence, their leader gracefully dismounted, a figure of stature and strength, with braided hair that shimmered with strands of silver. His gaze was fixed not on Ellis, nor on the expanse of land, but solely on Martha. Then, gradually, he cast his gaze downward, resting it upon his son. Silence enveloped the room, lingering like a heavy fog, until the boy released Martha's hand and took a step forward. He uttered a phrase in Comanche. Softly spoken, unwavering cadence, the man sank to his knees. Martha may not have grasped the words, yet she felt the weight of the moment. The father enveloped the boy in his embrace, burying his face into the warmth of his shoulder, not as a warrior, but as a man who believed he had lost it all. After a moment's pause, the man rose to his feet and turned his gaze back to Martha. This time he nodded, not from gratitude nor from politeness, but from a deep sense of recognition. She had preserved his essence, and for that, she would forever hold a place in his narrative. In that moment, he took an unexpected turn that left everyone in disbelief. He moved aside, extending a hand toward the boy, inviting him to make his choice. The boy pivoted, casting his gaze between the imposing warrior and the woman who had come to embody his sanctuary. His gaze rested on Martha for a moment, then shifted to Ellis, before he finally grasped Martha's hand. She sensed his tiny fingers intertwining with hers, petite, cozy, assured. In that instant, 50 warriors lowered their heads in a solemn pact of understanding. Silence reigns, devoid of any formalities. A simple truth exchanged among souls who have experienced the profound loss and rediscovery of that which is too sacred to articulate. They lingered until the sun ascended above the ridge. Then the riders disappeared into the hills, akin to smoke drifting back to the wind. 3 days later, the town convened at the chapel, not for a funeral, but for a wedding. A subdued affair. In the absence of melodies and blossoms, only hands clasped above fractured pews and the quiet weeping of those who, at long last, recognized her true essence. Ellis eschewed the conventional suit and the pristine white attire, yet around her wrist hung a necklace of hawk feathers, a striking testament to her individuality, a present from the boy, and as their lips met, the light filtering through the stained glass illuminated the scar on her neck, not to humiliate her, but to adorn her. The townspeople rarely uttered a word about it. Some still glanced over their shoulders. Yet the baker, the blacksmith, and even the woman who had once labeled her as cursed began to acknowledge her presence in the streets, offering nods and greetings. Faint fissures etched into ancient stone. The ranch expanded. Fences proliferated. A smokehouse was constructed. In the spring, wild colts galloped through the creek bed, their manes shimmering in the golden light. The boy was named Thomas, a tribute to a man whom Ellis had once laid to rest with his own hands. A name that pays tribute to those who have passed away, and start anew. On a chilly winter evening, Martha found herself by the flickering firelight, observing as Ellis skillfully repaired a saddle. Thomas nestled within the folds of a blanket, softly humming an ancient Comanche melody to himself. Martha gazed out the window, watching the snow drift gently and languidly beyond the glass. Silence enveloped the world. Ellis lifted his gaze. "Have you ever pondered how we arrived at this moment?" he inquired. "No," she said, her fingers gliding gently through Thomas's hair. "Yet I ceased to linger in anticipation of another's salvation." Ellis extended his hand toward hers, grasping it gently, as if he intended to hold on forever. Outside, the snow deepened, yet within, the fire glowed unwaveringly.